The Intercollegiate Psychedelics Network.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Mariano Lara. I hold a bachelor's degree in psychology. After my graduation, I moved to Australia, where I spent 3 years working with people with autism. And then I moved to Canada, spent a couple of years there. And now I am studying a master's program in humanistic psychotherapy at UBAC, which is a private university in Morelia, Mexico, which is also my hometown. And precisely because I am studying a master's program in humanistic psychotherapy, I am interested in client-centered therapy in particular. And today I'm going to share with all of you my thesis project, which is called Opportunities and Limitations of Client-Centered Therapy, working with people who consume psilocybin mushrooms. So before uh, talking about humanistic psychology, I just want to talk a little bit about what is psilocybin mushroom. There is a specific group in the fungi kingdom that is called psilocybin mushrooms. This type of mushrooms contain a psychedelic compound called psilocybin. And when we consume these mushrooms, our body converted into a substance called psilocin. And this substance induce alterations in our brain. For example, alterations in consciousness, in mood, in cognition, and in perception. And I know that nowadays we have a lot of scientific papers talking about the potential benefits of these mushrooms, but something really interesting is that the use of these mushrooms for therapeutic and for spiritual purposes is not something new. And actually, according to Michael Pollan, for example, human beings have been used psilocybin mushrooms for thousands of years. And here in Mexico, in particular, different indigenous groups have been used these mushrooms for uh, in ceremonies, religious ceremonies. For example, the Aztecs used to call this mushroom Teonanacatl, which means flesh of the gods. And also the Mazatec people, that maybe they are the most famous uh, culture related to psilocybin mushrooms. They use this type of mushroom as well in ceremonies called veladas. But interestingly, there are also different indigenous groups in Mexico that have been used these mushrooms for similar purposes. For example, one group is the Cuicatecs, the other groups are the Zapotecs, and also the Mixe. And something really interesting about this is that these three groups are also located in the state of Oaxaca, which is in the south of Mexico, just like the Mazatec people. And precisely because the reason why the Mazatec people became famous worldwide is because where Gordon Wasson published his article Seeking the Magic Mushroom, and he described in that article his experience consuming psilocybin mushroom during the spiritual ceremony called veladas. And he also described when he met the famous curandera, Maria Sabina, who maybe you know about her. She is basically a symbol of the Mazatec people from the 20th century. And just to talk a little bit about what is exactly a velada, according to Rodriguez Venegas, who is an expert in the studying the Mazatec people, there are the the person who is guiding the people who consume the mushroom. You can see it on my slide. My Mazatec is terrible, so I don't want to mispronounce the name. You can see the name of the person who is the person of knowledge. And of course, you have the people who consume the mushrooms during the ceremonies. And something that it is really interesting for me is that the people who consume mushrooms can also invite relatives and some family members to just to be witness of the ceremony. And it's also important to remember that for the Mazatec people, the use of psilocybin mushrooms is not only for therapeutic processes, but for them, the psilocybin mushrooms is a way to connect to the spiritual world. So it's a fascinating culture. And now that I talk about the Mazatec people and the history of psilocybin, I think it's time to talk more about what is humanistic psychology. Uh, in the 20th century, we had the psychoanalysis theory and also behaviorism. But then Abraham Maslow, who was an important psychologist, he decided to create a new theory, and it was called humanistic psychology. And maybe you remember his pyramid. And he talked about the different stages of the development of human life. And he is one of the probably the most important figure in humanistic psychology. And with the with the pyramid of Maslow, humanistic psychology became the third first in psychology. But as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, my main interest is Carl Rogers. And Carl Rogers is basically like the second most important figure in humanistic psychology. Well, the main reason why Carl Rogers is important in humanistic psychology is because he disagreed with Maslow with the idea that the human beings have like a specific goal or like a main goal, which is located in the top of the pyramid. And that goal is achieve self-actualization. Well, actually, Carl Rogers disagreed with that idea. And for Carl Rogers, life was more like a process of constant learning, of constant self-development, and human beings don't have a specific goal. Basically, we spend the life knowing more about ourselves, knowing more about our environment, our capacities, our limitations, but it's a constant process, and it ends until we die, until we pass away. And of course, he developed what is called a client-centered therapy, which is a therapeutic approach that I want to talk more in the next slides. Okay, now what exactly is client-centered therapy? Uh, well, it's an approach, of course, in psychotherapy that is related to humanistic psychology. And the primary belief is that the client can decide what to analyze and how. So it's important to remember this because it's fundamental in this approach that clients have a lot of freedom to decide what they want to analyze and what they don't. And also, the therapists offer and clients experience a genuine and empathetic relationship, and they will respond with significant self-direction and self-expression, which means it's really important to create a safe environment and also an authentic environment between the client and the therapist. So both can have a peaceful relationship and also the client can feel comfortable so they can explore more deeply about the different aspects of their life. And now maybe you are thinking, okay, and why this is related to the consumption or helping people who consume psilocybin mushrooms? Well, talking more about psilocybin mushrooms, I found something really interesting. For example, one of the main characteristics of this approach is that it's non-directive. And this principle is also related to the principles of MAPS and also Sendo project. For those who don't know, Sendo project is a project who train volunteers who go to different festivals, for example, the Burning Man and other festivals, and they train different volunteers to provide a safe environment to the people who decide to consume psychedelic substances. And one of the main principles of the Sendo project is that it's non-directive as well, just like client-centered therapy, and related to MAPS. And MAPS published a scientific paper for people who is dealing with PTSD and they are consuming MDMA. And also one of the main principles specifically about communication is that is non-directive. So I think for uh, helping people who consume psilocybin mushroom, I think is like fundamental, this non-directive approach, because at the end, every person is different. People have different experience with psilocybin mushrooms, and of course, they have their background, they have their personal history. So I think it's important just to respect what the clients want to explore, what they want to analyze, and what they want also to share with the therapist, and just to allow the clients to respect what they want to share, what they want to analyze, and the therapist is not someone who is guiding the person. Basically, the clients have complete freedom about what they want to analyze and what they want to explore. Uh, okay, so now that I already talked about the main characteristics of client-centered therapy, I want to talk about the opportunities and why I think this approach could be beneficial for a lot of people who consume psilocybin mushrooms and now they want to go to a therapist, in this case, a humanistic psychotherapist, and want to explore that experience with them, want to share what they saw, what they felt. And one of the main advantages that I saw here is that it's non-directive approach. I mentioned this in the other slide. And also the therapist is at the same level as the client, which is related to the non-directive approach, because in different approaches, the therapist is someone who is guiding the people, basically someone who is helping the people to explore different aspects of the therapeutic process. Client-centered therapy is a little bit different. The client and the therapist are at the same level, so the client can feel more comfortable at the moment to share different aspects of the psilocybin experience and what they felt. And basically, it creates like a more friendly environment between the client and the therapist. Another opportunity that I found here is that clients have their inner capacities for healing and set their own goals. This is something that is so uh, popular, actually, when we're talking about client-centered therapy, that the clients have a lot of freedom. And if they want to analyze something in particular that they saw during their experience with psilocybin mushrooms, they can do it, but maybe they can do it in maybe 1 month or maybe 1 week. So basically they set their own goals, and it's not the therapist who say, okay, you need to analyze this for the next 2 weeks or the 3 weeks. No, actually the clients have that freedom. They decide when and how, what they want to analyze, in particular from the psilocybin experience. And also the philosophy of client-centered therapy is that people have the inner capacity to heal themselves. And also that is a non-possessive one. This means that the therapist is sensitive and it's friendly and have a lot of consideration for the clients. So the clients can feel safe at the moment to express their experience with psilocybin mushrooms, and they can feel comfortable because they know that they are in a safe environment where it's free of prejudice, and they can share what they learned and what they saw during the psilocybin experience with the therapist, because the therapist won't judge what the client is expressing or what the client is sharing. But of course, it's important to mention, even though I really enjoy client-centered therapy and I think it's an approach with a lot of strengths, of course has a lot of limitations, specifically talking in helping people who consume psilocybin mushrooms. And the main limitation that I found is that the approach cannot be ideal for people who really need a structure in their life and also need direction, which is something understandable. A lot of people, especially people who decide to consume psilocybin mushrooms, and they really want to understand more about their experience and how that experience is connected with their inner feelings or their inner fears, the inner emotions. For them, maybe they need another approach with more direction, with more structure, and client-centered therapy perhaps is not the best therapeutic approach for them. And I also found that neither can be the best option for clients who with a serious mental health diagnosis, which I think is also completely understandable, because now every day we see more scientific papers talking about the potential benefits, not only about psilocybin, but also about different psychedelic substances, about the benefits in helping people dealing with addictions, with PTSD, um, with different mental health issues. So client-centered therapy, it can be so idealistic for a lot of people and just related to the other limitation. It hasn't, the approach doesn't have enough structures. So for people who receive a diagnosis, consume psilocybin mushrooms, and now they want to explore their experience with a professional psychotherapist, probably client-centered therapy is not ideal for them because they need someone with more training and in different mental health diagnosis, and someone with more structure, of course. And well, just to conclude my presentation with all of you, as I mentioned, I think humanistic psychology is a beautiful approach to psychology, and specifically client-centered therapy. It is an approach with a lot of benefits, helping people who consume psilocybin mushroom, because basically the therapist is at the same level of the person, so the person can feel comfortable at the moment to share their experience, what they saw, what they felt, why they think the different things that they saw during the experience and what they felt can be related to what they um, are dealing in life right now. So I think that is beneficial, and it's also an an, an approach that see the clients with the capacity to heal themselves, which is something I think really good, because at the end, psilocybin mushrooms, I believe, is a mushroom that is helping people to heal and also to learn more about themselves. So basically, the philosophy of humanistic psychotherapy and client-centered therapy is that we have the inner power to heal ourselves, and psilocybin mushroom is that huge help, of course, to help to heal ourselves, but at the end, it's a little help. But of course, it's not for everybody. Client-centered therapy is not for all people with different characteristics, with different diagnoses. And I think it's also important to accept, like humanistic psychotherapists, that when we can work with people with different characteristics, for example, a PTSD diagnosis or addiction, I think it's important to tell them that they should find someone else with more training in those aspects. And but I think it's fine, because at the end, psychology has different approaches, and humans, we are so diverse. And I think it's beneficial to have different approaches so we can help people with different characteristics and different backgrounds. But overall, client-centered therapy is a good approach and beneficial to help people who consume psilocybin mushrooms and want to explore that experience with a therapist. And thank you for your attention, and thank you for all the people who organized this magnificent event. For those who read in Spanish, by the way, I highly recommend you the book by Rodriguez Venegas, Mazatecos, Niños Santos, and Güeros de Huautla de Jiménez. It's a great book, and she wrote about how is the life of the Mazatec people and how the Mazatec people use these sacred mushrooms in their ceremonies. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.